Dan Kendall.
Eugene Borhovich.
I know it's a little odd for me to not say Jim Joyce, but we've missed a couple of weeks, Jim and I, and this week he's traveling. He's in Basel with the crew. Lots of people at this health summit there. I forget top of my head the name, but anyway. So excited to have you as my partner in crime today. And before we let our awesome guest in, who both of you know each other, which doesn't happen actually often with Jim and I. Like when we get the guest, he either knows them or I know them. So this is wonderful. Maybe give us a little bit of the update. You've been, at Vi, you've been to different conferences, and you sort of taken Health Podcast Network to the next level. So give our audiences like 60 seconds.
Excellent. Yeah, you just summed it up. We're taking it to the next level. Look, this is the time that we really have to focus on high value, high impact, human-centered, evidence-based information. We're under attack in so many ways from AI and algorithms and every other sort of way. So really creating ways that you can connect information to the soft tissue between people's ears is more important than ever. And we're really taking podcasting to the next level to really elevate and
Love it.
amplify credible health podcasts. So we formed a new organization, healthpodcast.org. It's one mission, 4 platforms. So we've got Health Podcast Awards. We did the Health Podcast Summit last year. We'll do it again this fall.
That's right.
We've got a Health Podcast Show where I talk about the intersection of health and podcasts. And then we also have a brand new health podcast library that will be rolling out shortly before I go to South by Southwest. This is the next generation of health podcast
Love
network.
it.
This is taking all the things that I wish we'd had in January 2020 when I launched it and putting this into a new level of software that allows people to follow shows, link to their favorite platforms, get updates in their inbox when their favorite shows post new episodes, integrate YouTube playlists, and so much more. So yeah, we're really ramping.
Exciting. Listen, I think you mentioned a couple of words,
really pleased
which
to be a part
is
of it.
sorry, we had a little delay. I love the new direction, and I love the word science-backed and community and trust. So I think, we need to all get there. With that, and talk about, science, I am pleased to let Margaret Moore in. I think we've known Margaret now for it's approaching like a decade, or at least 6, 7 years, Margaret. But welcome. And
Thank you.
before I let you in, Dan is not the usual co-host, but with my usual co-host Jim, we either one of us knows the guest or the other one knows the guest because we all invite. So this case, it's perfect because we all know each other already. So.
Good stuff.
Yeah, it's great to see you again, Margaret.
Yes, ditto.
Well, welcome to the shot. And as usual, this podcast, this show is really about getting to know our guest, as far back as you want to take us. You can take us all the way to childhood. But for our millions of listeners and viewers, we'd love to get to know who Margaret really is, kind of, behind the Coach Meg brand. And we'll interrupt.
Yes. So, well, there's 2 sides to me, Margaret and Coach Meg. They're different personas. So one is the businesswoman with the MBA and the button down, analytical, strategic business kind of thing. You know that from your business world.
Yeah.
And then the other side of me, which really didn't come alive until I became a coach, I would say I didn't know it even existed, is the Coach Meg side, which is the creative. So there really are 2 sides of the brain. And I am grateful to having moved into the coaching field out of biotech. Have been in the C-Suite in biotech from my mid-30s, which is 30 years ago. So, I was doing that MBA thing. When I started in coaching, I didn't intend to be a coach. I intended to be a CEO of a coaching company, but it didn't work out that way because early on, and still to this day, you probably would agree that people still don't really fully understand or respect what the coaching discipline at its best is, and that it's a very powerful transformational conversation. And so I had to do it in public in presentations to people who are sitting there, I already do this. And I had to make some transformational happen, and they had to see the body language of the other person like shift to something different. And so then I discovered, you know what, like I have a knack at this, like this is kind of cool. So that's my intuitive side that's able to not be linear. And so I definitely was pulled into it for that reason. And I think a lot of us as coaches have found that too. We didn't know that we had this intuitive side that could be this combination of warmth and real, going for the jugular when it comes to transformation. That sort of that nice combination. So yeah, I'm very grateful that this field found me.
Well, it's all serendipity, right? But maybe before we dive deeper into coaching, right? I think, we always love to, like, where were you born? Where did you grow up? Kind of what maybe was the impactful
How did
things
that turn
from,
into this?
yeah. And we'd love to
Well,
spend a little time on the life sciences biotech, because I think
yeah.
this would be worth the conversation into coaching.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure I fully figured out how my childhood turned into my coaching career, but I was born on a dairy farm in Canada,
Amazing.
north of Toronto. Very quiet place. I had a barren childhood of, there was no social life, there was no swimming lessons, bicycle lessons. I learned to play the piano. It was a very, I was starved um, for stimulation. I went to a two-room school. Each room had 4 grades,
Wow.
so I grew up in a very like in a sort of sensory barren kind of thing. So whether that shaped me or not, I am very independent. I really don't want to work for anybody else, and I haven't in the last 25 years. And and I'm very grounded, like in who I
Yeah.
am and what I mean. I mean, sure, I have my ups and downs and I get activated. I have an ego, just as much as everybody does. But there's something about being grounded in nature that is, maybe I'm like less socialized, less vulnerable. And as a Canadian living in America, now I'm a Canadian American, um, I've benefited fully from what this country offers immigrants. I mean, it's amazing. It's a world-class place. I mean, Canada's great, but I also lived for 6 years in the UK. I moved to the
Hmm.
UK to finish my MBA and start my biotech career because there was no way I could get a green card at that point with
Margaret,
a,
I want to
Interesting.
back you up. I've
yeah.
been an immigrant in the UK
Oh,
before.
really? Yeah.
Yeah, I moved there back in 2003. So it's funny because I'll often have people in Britain complain to me about the immigrants, and I sort of look at them and say, "You do realize that I'm an immigrant." So I remember having that conversation with my oldest daughter about 2016 during Brexit, around what
Yeah.
an immigrant is and how I was one, and relating that to her and her upbringing. But I want to go back to something you said about the school, because I had a good friend that actually went to it sounded like a similar sort of school that was like all the grades in just a few classrooms.
Yeah.
And that sounds incredible. And I remember one of the things you told me was that it actually taught you a lot because you were also sort of responsible for teaching the younger students. And I was wondering how that sort of involvement in such a small rural area where you were exposed to all these different age groups, how that sort of prepared you for going up to what you chose next, which I'm curious about how you chose to go
Yeah.
on from graduating from high school in Canada.
Yeah. For sure, it was a small world. What did I take? I mean, the thing that I wanted most to do was to drive the tractor.
Hmm.
And I did finally by the time I was 8. So I didn't have any dolls or like there just weren't, there was no extra
Right.
fun for toys and stuff. So I think this just being alone with myself, like I spend an hour a day talking to my 9 parts. I've now mapped a model of the mind. That's probably, comes from my ability to sit with myself. I'm an introvert, so I'm prone that way. But there wasn't pajama parties. There wasn't, the usual stuff. Like, so I think it's more that I am able to be alone with my own thoughts and the strength that comes from that. But mostly I just wanted to get out of there.
What happened when you got out of there? Where did you go?
Where'd you go? Yeah.
We went to Oakville, which was outside of Toronto, and I went to high school, was a trade school. It wasn't this, I didn't have a good education, actually. I don't think it wasn't until my MBA degree that I really got a good education. I would say I was lost around.
Wow.
I wanted to go to medical school. I thought about law school. I thought about being a musician. I mean, I thought about all kinds of things. But it was my business degree, my MBA. I was age 23. So I finished university at 20. I raced through. I got through high school a year early. I raced through college. And it was my MBA degree that I finally realized, oh, this is where I belong. I'm a businesswoman because my parents became teachers. So there was just and my family were all in it, they were all government or school education. So I think the real thing that happened was when I got to MBA school. And then I was so I'd say that's more the beginning of who I am than the childhood. The childhood was something to be left behind in a group.
Except the quiet moments, right? I think
I'm not afraid of the
all,
dark. I'm not afraid of Rottweilers. I'm not afraid of animals. I'm not, what does that matter in day-to-day life? I don't know, but I think it's the groundedness. The farm's very quiet, and you're just with yourself. There's not a lot like there. We didn't really have much TV. So I didn't own TV until my 20s. Yeah, so
it's very quiet. I mean, it's very quiet and very dark. I remember this friend that I'm talking about, he's from Virginia. We went out to his house after we graduated from college, and we drove out all these different roads, and one of the ways took us up one side of the mountain and down the other side. And he said, "Well, Dan, I figured that there's 3 ways to get into this valley, and I figured you guys would like the paved road." He was right, but it was so quiet out there, and that quiet and that stillness and the darkness of the sky was really very, very different. So when you got to do your MBA, where did you begin to get interested in the health, the merging between health and business?
So I was really trying to figure out. My first job was in accounting, so that lasted a year. I was like not happy, but I learned how to, read statements. I learned how to create books. I learned how to, I was not fit to be an accountant, but I've been CFO a couple times. So that was definitely, a useful experience. I was in finance then, in international trade. So I was really like wandering around, but I had this biology degree, and biotech was born in the like around 1980 when I went to business school a couple years later. So I thought, I want to get into biotech. So the thing is, I wanted to be at the beginning of things. And so fortunately in my class, we had a professor who was consulting for Pharmacia in Sweden. And Gunnar Westman, who was the CEO, his son Harold was in my class, and I tutored Harold. He was a Swede. He wasn't used to North Americans, business school. And I lived with the 2 Swedes. Actually, we shared a house in our second year. And his dad credited me with getting his son through passing MBA school. And so, I got a job in the summer in pharmacy in New Jersey, and that was a fun project. And then I did interview then I finished my MBA in London, and I did interview with Pharmacia in Sweden. But in the end, I decided to stay in the UK for a lot of reasons. So basically putting biology and business together, and then being in Europe. So in that sense, I was really an adventurer. I mean, for that era, to be a woman. So that's when Margaret Thatcher was prime minister. Queen Elizabeth was in her 50s. Those were 2 very strong women. For a North American woman MBA to be in the northeast of England working for Imperial Chemical Industries, which is where I was very unusual. I was very not typical in that. There was one other woman, and we became friends. She was the corporate lawyer in her 20s. She was amazing.
Wow.
And so the main thing that happened is I became very adventurous, including like lots of big wilderness trips, climbing, going to Nepal 20
Wow.
wilderness trips through that era. So in that sense, just really adventurous. And coaching has been an adventure, and now AI is becoming it's becoming my third
You,
career.
you
And when you would take those
jumped.
sorts of trips, oh, sorry, Eugene, you go ahead.
No, go ahead, Dan. Go ahead.
I was just going to say when I remember taking trips, not to Nepal or anything, but just the fact that when you used to take trips years ago, you'd really be off grid. You
Yeah,
know, you didn't have a
I
phone, you
love the
didn't have the
wilderness.
ability to check email. I remember going to these cafes with, you know, banks of computers and paying for half an hour to go in and check Hotmail and send emails to people that I'd met along the path and things like that. So that must have been a very different experience when you would go halfway around the world and be completely disconnected. And especially,
Yeah,
I'm a father of two daughters. I think about this, you know, traveling,
Hmm.
women traveling. It's not safe today in the 2020s.
it was very
It
different.
wasn't
Yeah.
safe 20, 30 years ago either. So it took a lot of
Well,
chutzpah. And
I went in groups, so it was an
okay.
Australian expedition in Nepal. I did 2 weeks in Baffin Island, which is next to Greenland, north of the Arctic Circle. That was the toughest thing I've
Well,
done. I was physically strong. I'm small, but I was strong. I mean, I did bike trips and kayak trips in Queen Charlotte Islands, which is halfway between Vancouver and Alaska. I mean, that was a different era because I've been working 6, 7 days a week since I started in coaching. It's been a very different life,
but,
I
is it
mean,
really working when you enjoy every moment of it, Margaret? No.
I
I
mean, it's very different world. Like I really had a balanced life then,
yeah.
but this building this coaching space, which was really starting from scratch for me 25 years ago, there was no coaching curriculum for health professionals. There was no science. There was no, I mean, all of the Institute of Coaching, the National Board, Wellcoaches, all that I, shepherded along, not alone by any means, but it's been a different era. It's been more like building a legacy. Whereas before I had a great career in biotech, but I also had real life balance. We had 6 weeks vacation when I worked in the UK.
Well,
And we took
that's the
it
beauty
all.
of being in
We
Europe,
took it
right?
all.
Yeah.
We'd go for 2 weeks to Spain. I would go, So it's really three different lives. One is the sort of cloistered, smaller life in my childhood. The next was adventure, global travel, biotech, and real physical adventure. My first marriage is in there, and then the second has been really building something with a lasting impact. So yeah, very different eras.
You know, now that we're in the third era conversation, I think, as you know, Marina and I have been building Your Coach for what seems like almost a decade now, but it's not. It's only 6 years. But one of the things that we found, and I think part of the origin story is Marina discovered health coaching on her recovery journey, right? And that's how Your Coach became. But, the word coach is being used so loosely these days. Well, and I think really
Always was.
often
Yeah,
and
always.
always
Yeah.
was. And I think, you shepherding the science along for all these years, kind of coming from the biotech, which, I think we have some similar paths that come
Yeah.
from
Yeah.
pharma,
Yeah.
right? And I think science and
Great.
RCTs are important. How do you look at coaching, and how do we as an industry, health coaching industry, really find that space to differentiate from? And again, of course, there's life coaching, there's physical activity coaching, there's career coaching, there's executive coaching, which I know you've done a lot of work, and I think this industry was born out of the executive coaching. But tell us how you're thinking about it, and how do we really the word
Yeah.
coaching in there?
Yeah. I mean, I definitely went through a phase recently where I felt pretty disillusioned. Um, and I'm through that now. It's a good time to be talking to
Good.
me. Um, because Not because of well coaches and anything I've done, but there is really a lack of depth in coaching skill. And so that leads to, and it's not just in the health and well-being space, it's across the
Yeah.
space. It's, there's a lot of people with some basic training who don't have, I mean, the many of the
Well,
competency models
anybody
have,
can call themselves a
yeah.
coach,
Well,
really.
there are credentials.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember talking to AI recently, and
Which one? No.
I don't know, it was Claude, but I don't know where it
Yeah.
came up with this, but it said something like coaching is full of badges and not much depth. And I thought, damn, like that's exactly right. And I'm on the depth side, but you can't sell depth, to be
Yeah.
honest, very easily. I mean, it's a small niche, both of people who want to be coached at depth and people who can coach at depth. And so I think we're at that. And then of course, then we're easily criticized by the psychology world. But if you heard Marty Seligman at our Harvard Medical School Institute conference, I can't remember if you were there 2 years
No.
ago, but Marty, we gave him obviously the Lifetime Excellence
Yeah.
Award, and he is really big on coaching right now. He works with BetterUp, and he basically said, "Look, I've been tracking the clinical psychology literature for decades, and the outcomes aren't great. And what I'm seeing around coaching results are better. Coaching is working better." And from a very senior psychologist in the field, and that means that coaching at its best is is comparable to the best of any helping profession, but most coaches aren't there. And the reason I'm really excited about AI is that there's only so much I can do as one person, and the school as well at Wellcoaches, but there's only so much we can do because we're small islands in a
Hmm.
vast sea. But AI, I can teach it breadth and depth.
Yeah.
And,
But
and that
before,
that I can't that and that is how I think that's how in quiet moments every day, coaches who want to become more conscious and have more breadth and depth in how they understand how the mind works, how we help people shift their mindsets, how we get more people to be interested in growth and not just surviving. I think the human potential movement, this is actually, we're coming into a space now with AI where we can get that depth. And so I'm really excited again in a way that I haven't been in a while.
before we get into the bits and bytes of AI, right? I think one of the things that we touched on is science, right? So I think AI is there to help us augment, to learn, to your point, get deeper and expand, even coach as time, for lack of a better term. But, I think one of the things that we've been passionate about is, and again, I think both of us coming from kind of pharma, RCTs, we've obviously seen and driven heavily by the national board, et cetera, in the last 6, 7, maybe 8 years, more and more and more RCTs are being put out there across different conditions, across therapeutic areas, across cohorts of, different diseases.
Yeah.
So maybe you can talk a little bit about that. And I think maybe is that a differentiator, and how do we, because ultimately people are not buying health coaching, they're buying some kind of an outcome, right?
Yeah,
So,
yeah, and we're accountable for outcomes in a way that
yep,
other professionals
yep.
haven't been. I mean, I'm working with CMS leaders right now on a very, very explicit framework for coaching services, and at the moment they're moving forward, and we'll see where that lands. Part of that, so the thing I took on at Wellcoaches, we then handed it off to NBHWC, is to track the literature over
Hmm.
many years. And so Gary Sforzo at Wellcoaches, we have engaged him as our
Yep.
inside scientist so Ruth Wolliver and team, and Gary was on that team, created a systematic review-based definition of coaching. So what 5 elements that make coaching recognizable and distinct from other professions. And then that definition's been applied to the literature going back to 2000. So now we have all the literature in databases, and we know it all. And it was very important to me that we had our hands in all of it. And so part of the process with CMS has been to provide different buckets of literature,
Hmm.
all the chronic disease, the biggest and best studies with sustained results 2 years and out across many diseases. And then the studies just on older adults, which is over 65, and then
Yep.
loneliness and social isolation, and then medication. So that we have 26 studies now. We'll probably publish that that you can look. You're welcome to look at them if you wish. The submissions are public. So, but we do have quite a strong data set that shows coaching moves the needle across many diseases and populations. Whether it's cancer, whether it's COPD, whether it's obesity,
Yeah.
whether it's diabetes. Usually it's not alone. It's in combination with digital tools, a meal plan, dietary
Yep.
prescription. It's not alone because we're helping people implement the evidence-based prescription in the way that they can implement in their own lives. So if you look at what the American Psychological Association has put out to support the health behavior codes, it's pretty thin in comparison. We looked at this when I was at NBHWC. So we've got a good base, but what's the concern is across healthcare and within payer community isn't the evidence at this point. It's whether coaches will actually, comes back to my point about depth.
Yep.
On the job, will they actually move the needle consistently?
And with quality.
And with quality. And it's great to have a national exam, but that doesn't prove that coaches can coach and that coaches can deliver those outcomes. So the hard part's coming because we can have reimbursement pathways and we can have coaches and we can have evidence. But if the coach on the job doesn't move the needle, if the patients don't commit and move the needle together, it's not just the coach, it's actually the patients who are engaging.
I mean, this is what we have to engage in. Actually,
so
our healthcare system.
We haven't been tested yet as an industry, and we don't get to slide in, we don't get to just be another provider on the team that's not accountable to outcomes. We will, I think fee for service will, if things don't work, we won't get paid. But so we need the depth right now. So we're getting in the door, and that just takes the time it takes, and it took some time. But I do want to say, Eugene, we all need to be very, very, very grateful to all of the research teams who got these
absolutely
funded, because we had nothing to do with that. They generally created their own training modules for coaches. They created their own protocols. They did not rely mostly on the coaching experts. They got big NIH grants, 2 publications in the New England Journal of Medicine, several in JAMA. They did the work. They're the reason we're here. And we are standing on their shoulders. We had no say or no contribution to that. We built the standards. We built the workforce. We built the work,
Well, listen, Margaret, it takes a village, right? It always takes a village. There's different skills, right? There's science, you need the combination of the science and the commercial traction. You need the labor force and you need the standards. And like our little contribution from a commercial, I mean, we haven't done it full RCT, but we did, and equals only 150, but a retrospective observational study that is showing GAT7 reduction of almost 20% after 2 sessions, that is showing resilience improvements. And again, to your point, it has to be quality and depth, right? Because the clinicians and by the way, this is not, you mentioned earlier, kind of from a therapy perspective, we're big believers that an individual can work with a therapist and a coach, and 2 are very complementary. It's not necessarily either, right?
Yeah, well, exactly. And that's the point, that's the 2 do very different roles. I mean, you are going to see more, if we get through the gates, you're going to see a greater interest, and hopefully that will include a greater interest in depth of skill. And the fact is, AI can coach, and so it's going to be hard for coaches who don't have depth and impact in any area to continue, because the AI will outpace them. So we're going to find that the folks that are great coaches and use AI really productively, that's what's going to be the future, and that's a bright future.
What's I forget, I think Vinod Khosla says that around doctors, right? Or something, it's not something about it's not the doctors, it's the doctors that don't use AI.
Your job won't be replaced by AI. The doctors who use AI will replace the doctors who don't use AI.
I mean, I think it's the same with coaching. And I know, Margaret, you and I chatted even last year around, we do believe that, that human accountability, the empathy will still take time. And actually, I don't know if I will ever care about being accountable to some AI chatbot, but I'm always going to be accountable to a human, right? I mean, that's just the
And
nature
to
of
yourself,
humanity.
yeah.
And to,
Yeah, and
yes, of course.
people
Yeah.
will outgrow the AI dependency, at least I hope they will. The ones that are. AI is there to be at your side in every moment, whereas coaching is going to take you. I mean, AI does all the talking, right? It's not I mean, you can
Yeah.
do voice, but but it's not like a human conversation. And human conversations make your brain sweat, the good ones, in a way that you enjoy. And AI is doing all the talking and it's giving you ideas, but it's a different experience. And the two together are what
You mentioned CMS, and honestly, and Dan and I have these conversations all the time. Always trying to reconcile the administration. There is a big focus on prevention and well-being. We've seen that, and would love to the extent that you can, maybe give our listeners, viewers, an update on the CMS. And then, of course, we're seeing, everything from Medicaid cuts to et cetera, right? So I think we're trying to kind of reconcile, and where does health coaching, because the bucket of money that we spend on healthcare is just it's not going to get bigger, right? If anything, it's going to get smaller, and I think that's part of the challenge for us as the industry in health coaching on the reimbursement, because the clinician rates are getting cut by 1, 2, 3% a year, et cetera. So, if to the extent that you can chat a little bit where you see this going with CMS, and
Well,
your
I can
thoughts
tell you
on.
what we've proposed, and that they're listening to, and that's no one knows what they're going to do. They might not know
Obviously.
what they want to do at this precise moment, if I
That's
had to
true.
guess. But here's the way we framed it. We said first, so there's three priorities that came in with the new government. So Dr. Oz and Kennedy are the two leaders of this agenda. One is that there needs to be coverage options for lifestyle change support. Um, um, CMS Medicare needs to empower patients to achieve their health goals, and there needs to be support for patients to better manage their chronic diseases.
Mhm.
What is wide open is a program that started 10 years ago that has not really scaled up, which is the chronic care management program, which is designed for people who have 2 or more chronic conditions. It's paid for by Medicare, and some in health plans or can choose to pay as well. Right now, no one is delivering that well because no one knows how to have an ongoing conversation that creates accountability that patients want to participate in. These are their outbound calls, kind of like the old chronic disease management coaching.
Mhm.
So that program already exists, and it was already advocated for. And what's missing in it is it's not that it's not there, but it's not explicit. It's the patients having support to set their health goals and move forward isn't there explicitly, and using lifestyle change, lifestyle medicine, well-being behaviors to treat diseases is not there explicitly, and coaching services are not there explicitly. So you take an existing program and you say, let's actually make it work by having a provider that actually knows how to help people set goals, use lifestyle and well-being to treat disease and reach goals over time. That is a program that's
Mhm.
just sitting there not being used. So we suggested that the health and well-being coaching CPT codes be put under that umbrella when
Yep.
patients want to make change to multiple behaviors at a time. So they need time dedicated to that. And then there are 2 chronic care management codes for clinical staff that are 20-minute increments that can be used in more of the maintenance mode. So basically, you have an existing program that's underused, under a potential. You bring life to it through the coach, but then the wraparound that we proposed, because right now, I mean, I've had 3 annual wellness visits, and no one's asked me what my health goals are. No one, do you know anyone who's
Mhm.
had a doctor's visit where the doctor asked you, what are your health goals?
No, as a matter of fact, I changed my whole behavior last January when I was, no, you're eligible for GLPs without asking me any goals or lifestyle questions, right? So just, and so since then I lost, 20-ish plus kilos.
Wow.
And, lowered my A1C
So
by
good for you. Yeah. So good
Incredible.
for you. So it's a paradigm changing question. What are your health goals? So if
yeah.
that gets built into the annual wellness visit and other visits, it becomes standard of care. They're documented in the patient's voices. My goal is now you have a conversation opener between the clinician and the coach around what are your health goals? And they say, my health goals? Oh, my health goals? What do you suggest? Maybe they have them and maybe they want to just
Well,
but
I was good.
then that automatically says, well, would you like to work with a coach? That's their expertise, is helping people set goals around health,
Yeah.
lifestyle, well-being. So that's the framework. And it's hard to say no to that. It's just very sensible. It just brings to life. It's not a brand new program. It's bringing to life what this government wants. Um, that doesn't solve the financial issue, and our point there, using the evidence, is that there is a dose response to coaching that you'd expect. First, if people don't want to set goals and work towards them, they're probably not going to work with a coach, because we're not there for just a conversation. We're
Yeah.
there because we're on a train somewhere. And so patients and clients to slip away when they don't want to be part of that process, because it's painful to come back every couple of weeks and say, I didn't do anything. I mean, that doesn't work for anybody. So there is a dose response. The more you spend on coaching, the better people will do. And so if we can match the outcomes in the literature, which is, 5% weight loss over a year that's sustained, regular exercise, hypertension and numbers down, whatever, 5, 10, 15%, those are all reasonable if people actually engage in the lifestyle change. So I think there's and the government is trying to reduce fraud and make room for this, for spending, because they promised that they would do this. So if they keep their commitment, then I think we have a good chance to play that role, and then we will be accountable with patients to deliver those biometric outcomes and the lifestyle change, and we will live or we'll survive or thrive based on how well we do, because the payers will stop saying yes to reimbursing patients. That they'll just turn it down. They'll say, well, you don't have any history of moving the needles. So we're not going to pay. So we'll get in the door, and we'll be accountable, as will patients, because if we ask patients to have health goals, that's a whole new
Well, listen,
day.
you talked about fee for service, right? And obviously VBC models not just been talked about, they are being implemented. And, the physicians we speak to, like, well, without coaching in between the visits, VBC is pretty much impossible, right? Because people leave the office and then, the docs are accountable for the lifestyle, the changes, the behaviors. And this kind of leads me in, I'd love to kind of map your map into, we are able to put people on the moon and into the space, and have satellite Wi-Fi and all this, but we can't seem to convince people to move more, to not eat processed foods, right, et cetera, et cetera. What's the magic? And maybe a combination of kind of you mapping plus AI plus the human, kind of would love to understand where's Coach Meg's head in all of this.
Yeah, I know. I mean, the good thing is that the coaching world has not been on the healthcare train while people got steadily unhealthier. I mean, that's what's been happening.
Yeah.
I mean, the reason the lifestyle medicine movement is booming is because clinicians are tired of watching everyone get bigger and sicker, and no one wants to be unhealthy.
Yep.
No one. So no one's there, no one's in the state they're in, and you could probably relate to this. What you went, we all get to a place of struggling with health, mental health, with something. We all do. It's just part of the human experience. There's addiction to ultra processed foods. There's a lot of things going on, a lot of environmental things. People work too hard, they're stressed, they're not getting enough. So we've created a world. I mean, we all know this. I think the gap isn't motivation. The gap is confidence. People don't believe it's possible. And so the working with a coach is all about learning that you can change yourself, your mindset and behaviors, and you didn't think you could before. And that's what requires depth of coaching, breadth and depth, because you need to know you're actually helping someone build neural networks they don't have right now. If they thought it was possible, they would do it.
I think
So
there's just a lot.
it's really about building confidence and competence in a way that they haven't had to. And that requires real work. And not everybody will sign up for it, but there are more and more people that are starting to realize the pill, even the GLPs, aren't a permanent solution. They can get you started and help, but in the end, it's the living a lifestyle that you can sustain that is good for
You
you.
have to put the hard work in. There's just literally, I mean, you can argue, people calling GLP is the magic pill, but then you lose muscle, you still got to put the hard work in. And no matter what, then I know you were gonna.
Well, I was thinking about the use of the word coaches, and Eugene, you made the comment earlier that anybody can call themselves a coach. And I remember 20, 30 years ago meeting people who had very successful careers and then for whatever reason, resigned or were made redundant or whatever, and then suddenly said they were executive coaches. And then there's health coaches. And I've learned a lot of that through Eugene and Meg, when you and I have spoken in the past. I've learned from you as well. And I almost wonder if it needs a little bit of a rebrand in terms of, I mean, I'm not suggesting that you do it now, but I was thinking about, Eugene, you mentioned lifestyle. I think it was you that mentioned lifestyle and longevity medicine, and the way that some people are complaining about that now. So, well, basically, they're basically teaching you or saying the things that we've known for a long time: exercise, sleep, eat unprocessed foods. And I wonder if this was longevity coaching instead of health coaching, if it might get a better reception, because health sounds like something like a chore, like something that I have to do, whereas longevity,
Yeah, what's the
I kind
brand?
of want that.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different terms now. This conversation about do we need to rebrand has been with us for 25 years, so it's not a new thing. I'm still of the view that let's make coaching better and not change horses. Because it's about transporting people from one place to the next place, and it still really works. Okay, and so I like the term well-being rather than health, because people want well-being, not even so much wellness anymore. That term has gotten tired, but the term professional coach really is the best way to describe it, that with a specialty in something. So professional coaches, people who are trained to be professionals. I think that's our key. And then, you're doing it in this era. I'm a professional coach that works in this space. You can call yourself a well-being coach, a leadership. I call myself an executive coaching. My email is coachingexecutive.com, because I'm not pure coaching. I'm a combination of a leader, an executive who's coaching, and a lot of us in executive coaching are not following. So I think that having a term, making sure there's a distinction about being a professional coach, which means you went, and then what your specialty is. So right now you've got functional medicine coaches, and you've got lifestyle medicine coaches, and you've got integrative medicine. Those terms seem to work for people. Mindfulness seems to work. So I think it's really about branding in a way individually. I mean, the good thing about the American Medical Association is they called coaching health and well-being coaching, and they did us a big service by not just making it health coaching. And really, that's another gift from the universe, because well-being is now that with the science of well-being, psychological well-being, which is broad, it's a big topic. Well-being is a big topic, and it's a bit of a mouthful to say I'm a well-being coach, but it is, and it is a rich and deep construct. Well-being is really what makes your life worth living. There's really no other purpose in life, whether you're raising kids or working in a company, than promoting human well-being and planetary well-being. There's no other purpose. So I think it's more about, explaining what professional coaching is, which means you're well trained to help people make change they've not been able to make.
before we let Dan ask the final question, I do want to chat a little bit. I know you shared with us the kind of the mind map, the paper. Maybe you can talk about what does that mean in the context of the behavior change and integrated medicine, and maybe
and I've got
the
a
concepts.
visual that we can send out to listeners. But as a biologist, I have a different way of viewing the mind than psychologists, because biologists see structure and order, and psychology has multiplied the complexity of the human mind with many, many, many models and no unified framework. And I do think the mind is likely structured in the way that a molecule is, with a number of elements. They may not function that way, but that there's an orbital structure. That's how I see it, with confidence in the middle. Long story why that is the case. And then orbitals, the orbital round the middle. So if you think about your mind as a flying saucer with orbitals, the confidence is your ability to function in the world that reflects the competence and health and stability of your whole system. So when you're rocky, everything, your confidence is. And then your inner orbital is autonomy, the relational, and your thinker, which all orient around your identity. The stabilizing are the regulator, the achiever, and the meaning maker, which help you stabilize the core. And then the outer rings are the adventure and the creative, which deal with the external world. They're the ones that are out there, out there. And so I do think the mind has this structure. I've mapped it to Enneagram and Jung's types and Taoism and Howard Gardner, but the organizing principle, and I just submitted a paper on this on Sunday, is that there's a language basis to the structure of the mind that comes out of Robert Hartman's work that almost no one knows about unless you're familiar with Hartman's axiology. So the 3 dimensions of the mind that create 9 addresses are intrinsic, which is identity, extrinsic, which is task and relationship, and system, which is the system of the intrinsics working in the extrinsic world, the system of humans. And you take IES, you multiply it by 3, you have 9. Intrinsic, extrinsic, intrinsic, etc. And those 9 map to Enneagram, and I've mapped them to Jung. And so now we have a map that's a language map. So you can say to AI, go look for the intrinsic systemic, and it can go through its massive brain and pull back what's relevant to that, with some character around the other dimensions, because the mind has, these parts have drives, they have processes, talents, they have intelligences. So that's what I've built, which is basically like as if we all had all of it, which we don't. And now your AI can bring all of it to bear on your situation. It doesn't tell you all of it, it just gives you what you need. But then you basically take, it's called multi-perspective intelligence. And then you put on top of that, it's ability to do a coaching conversation.
Fascinating.
So it's a new structure for AI's mind. And that's my, if there was any logic to my legacy, the farm grounded me in biology, really. The biotech really got me to understand genetics and molecular biology, and I brought that to coaching and to the mind. And now that is finally something I can teach AI, then teach everybody. So that's sort of that brings the depth to the coaching world, to the mind. And when you see it, I find when people see it, the visual, they say, you almost recognize it. Like, that's my mind. Yeah, wow.
I mean, once we post it, you can feel free to comment with the link or whatever.
And that's why I'm jacked. I'm really excited again about coaching, because I couldn't do this myself. Because a lot of people aren't going to believe that I could have figured this out. I mean, that's just the truth. And so I've been keeping it out of the limelight. But when you see how AI does it, AI knows it. Like, it just knows where these parts are. It knows why this one's aligned with this one. It knows. I don't even have to tell it. It already knows. It's as if it already knows. And so that validates it. And so that's why this is a beautiful moment, because we can elevate coaching, and it's a coach who's bringing this out. It's coaching intelligence. It's not,
Right.
it's ours as coaches.
Yep.
We own this collectively. I've mapped it to the competency models. It maps beautifully. We cover all of these parts in our coaching competencies. It's like we already knew it. We already were doing it.
Amazing.
So this then allows coaching to be fully based on a structure that AI can implement and validate, that people can grow from daily at whatever level you are at. And so that, and as we enter into healthcare, I do think healthcare expects us to bring AI with us. They want, we're not gonna make it without AI at our sides, and so we might as well be the ones driving it. I hope this becomes like the coaching chip inside of AI, and all kinds of folks can use it and bundle it in whatever you want to do. So yeah, so that maybe, we started with the beginning. Maybe that's how it got to the end.
That's amazing. Well, Dan, I'm going to pass it to you for kind of the final question.
I have one job here, and that's to ask this final question. I won't do it as beautifully as Jim Joyce does it himself, but I'll try to do him proud. So essentially, you've shared with us some of your background and your growing up on the dairy farm and the move into college and university. You've lived around the world. You've traveled. You've taken a lot of risk and adventure. You discovered the MBA and health coaching. You've been at the forefront of building things and making things come into reality. If you look back at that 18-year-old self, that 18-year-old Meg, who's maybe in her first year of college, 18 years old, looking at the rest of the world, what would you like to say to her? And what sort of encouragement or advice or insights would you say to the younger self that would help to fortify these coming decades ahead of her life?
Yeah, actually, I'm going to turn it around, and I'm just going to draft it, because when I was 15, I was selected by my phys ed teacher for a leadership camp. And that was a peak experience that I have not matched until now.
Wow.
And it's because I didn't expect it, and because it was physical education. All these 15-year-old male hockey players and athletes, I was one of them, and I held my own, and not being an athlete. And when I look back, I can show you those pictures of me at 15. I was that person that I am now. And I went on a very long road to come back to what I already was. Before ego, before, I was very innocent, right? Like, I didn't know anything about leadership. And I got selected, and my best friend at the time, and we're still friends, she remembered it. We were together last year. That was like a moment when I was a leader, and I had it in me. And that's what really I'm doing, is leading.
Amazing.
Is leadership. It's more leadership than coaching. Coaching is just a way of leading.
Yep.
And so I'd say it's actually the opposite, that my 15-year-old self had it.
Brought you back.
And for the longest time, I've been saying, how come I'm not like, that was like this moment when I was in flow and I was my full self. Why? And I had some amazing experiences in that 2 or 3 weeks. Why am I not like, wow, how did I lose that? And I've got it back. So it's actually the opposite. I had it, and I only now got it back. Yeah.
Wonderful. Thanks for sharing that.
Definitely one of a kind. I think you're the first person in our almost getting to 200 episodes that basically said, I'm going to listen to my 15-year-old self again versus teaching. So kudos on that, Margaret. Thank you so much for joining us today. And we appreciate all the insights, and it was a pleasure to reconnect.
Thank you, guys. This is great fun. You just let it rip, and we had a good time.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Take care.
Great to see you.
Thank you.